We're back. Today, a big victory in Pennsylvania for voting rights that provides a sign to push back to the Republican-led voter suppression effort that swept through more than 35 states in 2013 alone. A Pennsylvania judge struck down the state's voter ID law, writing in his opinion, I love these words, voting laws are designed to assure a free and fair election. The voter ID law does not further this goal. Well, that's simple English. In a map we've shown you many times, you can see here that Republicans, and it is Republicans in this case, it is a partisan problem, in 36 states advanced legislation just last year to suppress the voting rights of those who vote Democrat. Often they happen to be African Americans and minorities, also young people and older people. According to the Advancement Project, every one of those bills was introduced, as I said, by partisan Republicans. Pennsylvania may buck that trend because of the court ruling today. Joining me right now is Judith Brown-Dianis, who's co-director of the Advancement Project, and Ryan Haygood. He's with the NAACP Great Legal Defense Fund. What an institution that's been over the years. So I want to start with Judith. I've been talking to you a lot about this. It's almost like an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. You know, it just keeps coming. They don't get the message. We've got these Pennsylvania people that just openly say it's for political gain. They don't BS us. They just say, fewer black votes, fewer big city votes, more chances our guys win.
It's right. It's total manipulation for their own game. But today we had a huge victory for democracy. You know, you showed several times last year Representative Turzai, who said, vote for Romney, check.
We can do that right now. Let's look at Mr. Turzai, the leader of the Republican legislature out there, admitting it's all about politics.
Voter ID, which is going to allow Governor Romney to win the state of Pennsylvania. Done.
Done.
Done. That's right. Well, today we say check for democracy.
And let me show you another guy, this chairman of the Republican Party, not a bad guy, Robert Casey. I met him at the Pennsylvania Society last month. Here he is doing the same thing openly and transparently, cheering for limiting the votes of Democrats. Let's listen.
Do you think all the attention drawn to voter ID affected last year's elections?
Yeah, I think a little bit. I think we probably had a better election. Think about this. We cut Obama by 5%, which was big. You know, a lot of people lost sight of that. He won. He beat McCain by 10%, and he beat Romney by 5%. I think that probably voter ID had helped a bit in that.
And that's the mere intimidation factor of people being afraid there was a new voter ID law after the courts had banned it.
That's right, because they tried to mislead the voters after we got a preliminary injunction. But
what do you make of this?
What
do you make of this barefaced admission on the part of the Republicans up in Pennsylvania? They do this to make sure people who look like you can't vote. I mean, they just do it.
That's right, because they know which way. They believe that people are going to vote a certain way. So this is the way they try and steal the election.
Unbelievable. Let's go to the NAACP. Ryan Haygood, thank you, sir. How does this fit into the history of voting rights? And ever since we've had, literacy tests were a joke, spell this in Greek or whatever it was, all the old games, poll taxes, and just outright, you can't vote here, you're black. And now we have in states that fought for the Union in the Civil War, that all their leaders have been for civil rights, back to Hugh Scott and Bill Scranton, all the good guys, and Ridge. And yet the rank and file leaders in the Senate and the House up there are openly against black voting as a political imperative.
Sure, Chris. Thanks for having me on your show, as always. I mean, I think you're right. I think these photo ID laws really are a modern iteration of a bygone era where there were poll taxes and other impediments to the ballot box. I think what's most striking about today's opinion, though, Chris, is that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania spent millions and millions of taxpayer dollars promoting a photo ID measure that they said they needed to protect against in-person voter fraud. And what is striking here is that the result of this case really is that the only evidence of fraud at the end of the day is the photo ID measure itself. The court found that by conservative estimates, 500,000 registered voters and up to 1.3 million voters in Pennsylvania don't have access to the type of ID that the Commonwealth was requiring, and Pennsylvania only was able to provide 17,000 IDs to the class of folks who didn't have the photo ID. So I think what this case today stands for is a proposition that where we really should be going, to your point about the history of our democracy, is toward greater expansion of the franchise. And we've seen in the last several elections historic turnout by a broad class of folks, people of color, women, young voters, disabled voters, and that is a trend that we really should be seeking to harness the momentum of, rather than making voting more difficult for people, as Pennsylvania's photo ID measure sought to do.
Judith, do you think this is a result of fear on the part of the older white Republicans that they're losing demographically?
Oh, this is definitely about changing demographics. This is kind of their last stand. But at the end of the day, Advancement Project and the ACLU teamed up with the Public Interest Center, and we won in Pennsylvania. We won for voters. We now have a new Voting Rights Act that has been introduced. And so we're going to make sure that they don't get to this.
And you got some friends out there like Bernard McGinley, a good Irish guy. Anyway, thank you, Judith Brown, Diana, and Ryan Haygood. Just kidding. It's a little ethnic there. And by the way, you're watching Hardball, the place for politics. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Haygood.
Thanks for having me.